Nice to be here. Thank you for having me in what sounds like a brilliant lineup of talks. I will definitely have to check some of those out as well. So yeah, as Dorian said, I am going to give you a little bit of an intro into City to Sea, talk a little bit about the problem with plastic. We won't go into huge amounts of depth because it's just a massive topic, but I'm hoping to touch on some of the big issues, and then if you've got any questions, we can do a roundup at the end. Also going to tell you a little bit about what we're doing as an organisation, and then what you can do to help. So hopefully we will get through quite a bit tonight, and I'm looking forward to questions at the end. So hopefully some of you have heard of City to Sea. So we are a Bristol-based not-for-profit. We are campaigning purely on stopping plastic pollution at source, and we really focus on tackling the single-use plastic items that are most found on our beaches and our rivers. So we are based here in Bristol. We was launched in 2015, way back in the year of the Bristol Green Capital. As a way of tackling plastic pollution. So our founder, the amazing Natalie Fee, who is a campaigner and activist, she was so kind of aware of the problem of plastic. She'd watched the film Albatross, which I don't know if any of you have seen. I would recommend it. It is heart-wrenching, but really brings it to life, the scale of the problem and just kind of how the everyday items that we're using are ending up on beaches just way away in the Pacific Islands. So she saw that, she saw the plastic floating down the River Avon and knew that she had to do something. So here is City to Sea. We were set up, and our first campaign, hopefully you guys have seen this sticker around and about. So Refill was where it all began. So it was a consumer behaviour change campaign designed to tackle the issue of single-use plastic water bottles. So we knew that people wanted to tackle plastics, but we also knew that, you know, back then, if you did have a reusable water bottle, there just wasn't anywhere to fill it up. That accessibility just wasn't there at all. I know I used to travel a lot between Bristol and London, and I remember hiding in toilets of the pub to fill up my water bottle back then. So fast forward a few years, and we now have over 300,000 app users of our app. So it's a location-based app that connects people to the places that they can fill up their bottle. We've now mapped over 35,000 refill stations across the UK. Connecting people to those taps. We've worked right across the high street, so you can now visit pretty much any high street in the UK and fill up your bottle. And we've also worked with specific sectors, so we knew that the travel sector was a really big barrier. That's where people just weren't able to access free drinking water. So we've worked with partners like Network Rail to put in fountains across every UK train station. Hopefully you've seen the one at Bristol Temple Meads, and also now at Heathrow Airport, which I'm sure none of us have been to for a while. But if you remember, as you come through security, they now have drainage points where you can empty your bottle. As you go through security, you then see straight in front of you a fountain. So you can fill up your water bottle without then having to visit WH Smith and get flogged a 2-for-1 on bottled water. So we've had some amazing successes over the last few years, and we're going to talk through kind of some more about our campaigns in a little bit. But first of all, let's delve into the problem with plastic, which I imagine, being the group that you are, you will probably already know quite a bit about this, and I imagine probably already trying to take some steps. So we'll kind of go into some of the bigger issues and then talk a little bit about how plastics relates to climate change as well. So first of all, when we talk about plastic, plastic isn't actually a problem on its own. It's not this evil thing that it's made out to be. And actually the invention of plastic has enabled us to do some incredible things, to create, you know, medical supplies, to fix things, to make things lighter, to create technology. I'm sure we're all watching this on a computer that is made of plastic. Our cars contain plastic. But the big problem is single-use plastic. It's the plastic that we use once and we just throw away. It's just this consumerism that has just been fueled by the plastics industry, by the big brands who have sold us things that we do not need, that we just then instantly throw away. And I think it's completely undeniable that we are living in the age of plastic. It has been found everywhere, from the highest mountains of the world to the deepest trenches of the oceans. It's been found in our bodies. It's been found pretty much everywhere. And I think we're all familiar with scenes like this from watching Blue Planet, and from seeing it ourselves on beaches and rivers around the UK. But how did it get there, and how are we going to get rid of it? That is the big question. So we now produce a mind-blowing 300 million tons a year, and half of this, as I said, is single use, which, when you think of the scale of everything that we consume and use, half of that is used once and then just thrown away. It is designed to be thrown away. We've now produced more plastic in the last 20 years than in the whole of the last century, and production has increased 20-fold since the 1960s. And actually it's expected to double all over again, and almost quadruple by 2050. So whilst things seem to be getting better, brands are starting to listen. The trajectory for plastic production is just phenomenal. We really do need to take action now. And in the UK, it's estimated that we use around 5 million tons of plastic every year, and about half of this is packaging. So what is fueling this? And unfortunately, despite all of the consumer pressure and the corporate pledges, plastics has actually grown about 3.5% in the last 2 years, and about 16% in Asia. So we are just really seeing this trajectory around the world, particularly in developing countries. But interestingly, we are starting to see it slowing down in Europe, which I think has been driven by the Blue Planet effect, by consumers really starting to hold the brands to action. So we are starting to see this shift. But the thing that is driving this at the moment is the fossil fuel industry. As they are getting hit from all angles, which is amazing. They are now seeing plastic as their last kind of great hope for expansion before I think they have to face the reality of their future. And since 2010, the petrochemical industry has actually invested about 200 billion in production. So that's building this infrastructure, this just phenomenal infrastructure of pipelines, of gas extraction, of oil extraction, all designed basically to create plastics. They are booming, and then they're working obviously very, very closely with the big brands to sell this packaging, to come up with very inventive ways to flog us products. So essentially this addiction to plastic and the global crisis are two sides of the same coin. They're completely inextricably linked. So not only are plastics made from fossil fuels, but it's the entire production of them, all the way from the extraction to the transportation, to the refining and the manufacture, right through to the waste management. So all of that entire life cycle of plastic, something that most people don't consider or aren't really aware of, that plastics are one of the biggest contributors to the climate crisis. So some scary stats for you. Plastic will soon be a bigger contributor than both aviation and shipping put together, which is really terrifying. And it's actually thought to now make up around 4 to 8% of the world's oil production, just to create plastic. So a couple more stats, and then I promise we will try and bring things a bit more upbeat, because I appreciate it's a lot of information. But the production of plastics will now add more than 850 million metric tons of greenhouse gases into the atmosphere. That's just in 2019. And that's the equivalent of 189 coal-powered plants. And by 2050, the accumulation of these gases will account for about 13% of our remaining carbon budget. So just from plastics, we're really starting to eat into our budget, and that's actually the total amount of extra carbon that the planet can tolerate before we hit that tipping point of 1.5 degrees. So it's big, and it's growing, and we will find out more about how we can take action. So what's happening to all of this plastic? Actually, only about 9% of it has been recycled, which means that around 91% of it is somewhere in the world. Actually, we're starting to see a huge increase in incineration. So around 12% of plastic is now incinerated, or it's making its way into landfill or into the natural environment. In the UK, our recycling rate is official recycling rate is about 45%, but research organisation Eunomia actually believe it to be much lower. And this is just the plastic that's obviously recyclable, which is a whole other problem, that so much of what is on the market is actually not recyclable at all. There are so many complicated ways of plastic production. Things are produced with multiple layers of films, and the more complicated the product, the harder it is to recycle, or the lower quality plastic that you get out the other side. So whilst 9% has been recycled, actually the amount that is being thrown away because it's not possible to recycle is far, far, far higher. So where is it going? In the UK, of the plastic that we do recycle, of that 45% that the government claim, actually only about a third of it is recycled within the UK. And the other 2/3 we export. So once plastic waste enters our recycling system, once you wash out your bottle, you put it in your recycling bin, it gets picked up from your curbside recycling and taken to a recycling plant. What actually happens then is it's sorted and it's put up for sale on the international commodities market, where it's then shipped around the world. So plastic waste is now essentially a commodity, and it's going to developing countries. You probably would have heard a couple of years ago, China, who used to accept most of our plastic waste, actually put a ban on imports. And since then, we've seen a big influx of plastic waste going to other countries like Turkey, to Vietnam, to Malaysia, and to Taiwan. So it's ending up in these countries that don't actually have the infrastructure to manage the waste. So we sent 65,000 tonnes of plastic waste in the first 7 months of 2020, and that's the equivalent of more than 300 tonnes a day. It's a lot of waste that we think, I think there's a common perception in the UK that when you put your recycling out, it is actually being recycled. And if any of you have seen Hugh Fearnley-Whittingstall's War on Plastic, there's some really interesting section there where he travels to, I think he goes to Indonesia, but starts looking through the plastic waste sites. And actually what you're finding is shopping from Waitrose, it's from Marks and Spencer's, it's from the UK, and it's from all over the rest of Europe. So actually, just a quick one on this, the Environment Bill would have given ministers the power to ban this. So this is something that's very live in terms of policy at the moment. And there are various conventions European-wide that are being discussed to ban the export of plastic waste. And we are starting to see different countries sending it back. but the legislation was withdrawn during the pandemic. So we now need to find out what is going to happen with that post-Brexit and post us leaving the European Union. There's just a little snapshot. I'm sure you've probably seen these scenes before, but within developing countries, just huge piles of waste that have been exported there from the UK. And the big problem with this, as you can see, there's no infrastructure. If it rains, if there's a tropical storm, this is actually how a lot of our recycling and our waste is ending up in the oceans. And what happens once it gets there? So single-use plastic now accounts for 50% of all the marine litter that's found on UK beaches. It's much higher in some parts around the world. And globally, we're seeing between 8 and 12, depending on which research you read, is ending up in our oceans every year. And this waste entering the oceans is actually expected to increase rather than decrease to account for the accumulation around the world on land-based sources that will then trickle into the oceans. So how does it get there? So 80% of the plastic that ends up in our oceans comes from the land. So that is from our own waste. It's coming from rivers. There are 10 major rivers around the world that that contribute to plastic ending up in our oceans. Asian countries tend to get the blame for this a lot, as they tend to get mapped as the worst. But actually, a lot of that is because we are exporting waste to those countries. And then interestingly, looking at other sources, so about 20% is from fishing gear. So I'm sure you've all heard the term ghost nets and seen some of the awful images of whales and marine mammals that have been caught in nets. And the other thing that I found really surprising when we're thinking about microplastics, which are obviously a big contributor to marine plastic pollution, things like microbeads, which thankfully have now been banned, but also car tires are actually, when we're thinking of microplastics, they are the highest contributor to microplastics. So the tires get worn on the roads, they wash into the drains, which then obviously washes into our rivers and into our oceans. So there's quite a lot of innovation going on now with car manufacturers to look at what could possibly be done to stop that in the future. So there is a lot of interesting innovation happening in various different spaces. And actually, once plastics gets to the ocean, that only 1% of it is found floating on the surface, and actually 94% of it sinks to the seabed. And there's now an estimated 70 kilograms of plastic on every square kilometre of the seabed. I saw, where was it this week on the news? I think it was in Sicily or somewhere on one of the islands around Italy, which they just found and had mapped as the most polluted area of seafloor in the world. I don't know how they know that, since they haven't mapped a lot of the world, but seeing some of the pictures was really very, very, very shocking in terms of how visibly it was just there on the seabed. So what are the most common plastic items? And this is a really key area for focusing our campaigns at City to Sea. We tend to look at what the most polluting, the worst offending items, and we run campaigns to stop them getting there. So this includes things like plastic water bottles. I'm sure that's no surprise to anyone. We now use 1 million single-use plastic bottles a minute around the world. Things like food containers, cups and lids, sachets, cigarette butts. Actually, this one has just been knocked off the top spot for the first time ever. So cigarette butts has now been replaced by sachets and food wrappers globally, but this is looking at European beaches. And it was, interestingly, this is the data by the European Commission that was used to draft the Single-Use Plastics Directive. So this are the rules around banning certain single-use plastic items. So for example, stirrers, straws, and plastic cutlery were included in the Single-Use Plastic Directive, cotton plastic, cotton bud sticks. So we are starting to see them listen to some of this data, but it is taking a very long time. And that is why we're using this to shape our campaigns to try and stop these items ending up on our beaches. So the impact on wildlife, I'm sure you all know and have seen this, so I'm not going to dwell too much on the impact of wildlife, only to say that it is traveling down the food chain. So what is ending up in marine mammals, what's ending up in the plankton is then being eaten by the fish, and it's actually starting to enter the human food chain, and it's really starting to have an impact on humans and human health now, which is something that's becoming much more to the forefront. So WWF have done a really interesting piece of research, which is slightly terrifying, that suggests we are eating about 2,000 pieces of plastic a week, which is equal to the weight of a credit card or a pen that we are ingesting. And that's coming into our diet through things like drinking water. Through bottled water is actually much worse. The cleaning process of water through UK water plants actually cleans 95% of, or more, actually I think it's about 97% of microplastics are removed, but bottled water has very, very high rates of microplastics within them, which is something the bottled water industry does not like people to know. It's also in things like shellfish, where they are obviously filters. Salt has high levels of microplastics, but also things at home. We're starting to hear it coming from things like carpets. So if you have any kind of artificial carpet that isn't pure wool, the microplastics are coming off things like carpets, from our sofas, and are in the air that we're all breathing now. For the first time, we just heard in a study recently that babies in the uterus are now being found with plastic in their bodies, which is slightly terrifying, and scientists are only really starting to understand the health implications that this could be having on humans. So they're still not too sure, but looking at things like how it might affect our guts, or the impact of those chemicals once they enter the bloodstream and can affect our hormones. So what's happened since the pandemic? This has been a big area of focus for us. And obviously we saw a big increase in things like single-use plastic, particularly from takeaway food packaging, from retailers who all started shipping all of their shopping out in plastic bags for no apparent reason, and a lot of organisations who backtracked on their commitments to tackle single-use plastic and scale reuse. And of course, like, we 100% support that public health needs to be number one, but we don't think it needs to come at the cost of the planet. And actually there's a lot of scientific evidence now that has proved that reusables are perfectly safe to use. We know that COVID is a respiratory disease. There are no cases of transmission on COVID between food and food packaging. So we've been working really hard to get that message out to businesses, to retailers, and particularly to the food to go sector. The other thing that we've seen an increase of is obviously PPE. Some scary numbers in terms of PPE that's now out there in our oceans, and some scary stats as well about the carbon impact that's having as well. So I won't go into it too much, but I'll share some links so you can look into any of these topics in more detail if you are interested. So one more thing I just wanted to touch on, this kind of big picture around plastics, is the issue of bioplastics. This is a personal bugbear of mine and is something that's really being touted as a solution to plastic pollution. But I would very much regard this as a false solution. At City2C, we champion the waste hierarchy, and don't support anything that is just a replacement to another single-use item. And the issue of bioplastics is also really complicated, not just for consumers, but for the small businesses who have been trying to do the right thing by switching to sustainable alternatives. So to be called a bioplastic, something needs to be either biodegradable or made from plant-based materials. But the problem is that being made from a plant doesn't mean that a product will degrade like a plant. And actually, in reality, most bioplastics need to be composted at very high temperatures for several weeks in an industrial composter. So unfortunately, when you see those lovely cups that say, "I'm a green cup, you can put me in your composting," most of the time that is absolute rubbish, and they can't go in your home composting. They need to be collected and composted at high temperatures in an industrial composter. Unfortunately, we only have 15 of these in the UK, and to get them there, the bioplastics need to be collected as a single stream. So if you're putting bioplastics in your recycling, they'll actually end up contaminating the plastic that's there. So they are a real problem, and the government are starting to listen to this, but there is still no regulation around it, and unfortunately it is a really big area of greenwashing in the industry. So do watch out for those pesky little compostable cups, and make sure you put them in the bin and not in with your recycling. So what can we do about all of this? Because that probably all sounds incredibly depressing, I'm sure, and a little bit overwhelming, but there is stuff happening, and there is more that we can do. I think policy and legislation is number one. Getting some clear legislation in place that focuses on reduction over replacement and recycling. We have a lot of emphasis on recycling, and unfortunately now starting to see this shift towards false solutions. So making sure we keep the pressure on around reduction and getting some clear targets in place, and also making sure that we have a more unified recycling system across the UK, because obviously recycling is brilliant if it works properly. The other thing that we can do, we need to demand change. Brands and businesses will listen to us. Talk with your wallet, let businesses know what you want, and let them know that you want to see action on single-use plastic, particularly in the wake of the pandemic. Also, we need to start holding brands to account. So much packaging is not recyclable. There is no guidance or legislation around recyclability. So I think it's a really kind of key action point for the future, and something we'll be campaigning on, is really holding those brands and businesses to account. There are some big kind of movements and commitments. There's the wrap industry targets. Ellen MacArthur has a global commitment which has been signed by the brands that represent about 90% of the market. But unfortunately, all of these are voluntary. So whilst the brands sign up to them, what they actually have to do is essentially up to them. And the other thing that we can do to start to stem some of this is getting polluters to pay for recovery and processing. And the other really big and growing movement that I think needs to happen is halting the investment and infrastructure for plastic production. So just as we've seen with the divestment movement around fossil fuels, I hope we will see something similar, and people being more aware, particularly if they have moved their money because of the climate crisis, to be tying that in with single-use plastics and plastic production as well. But like I said, it's not all bad news. Change is really starting to happen. Half of Britons now are starting to feel guilty about the amount of plastic they use, and around 80% are trying to reduce what they throw away. 43 million UK shoppers want to see change happening. And I love this stat. that demand for Seven Worlds outstripped Glastonbury, Wimbledon and the Olympics. Like, we are starting to see this shift, and I think for the first time consumer awareness of this is at an all-time high. I think it's going to be interesting to see what happens off the back of the pandemic, but change is happening. So what are we doing about it at City to Sea? So we tackle, as I said, the single-use plastic items that are most found. So this includes things like plastic bottles, menstrual products, and flushed plastics, and then items like food packaging, takeaway packaging as well. And we're really focused on stopping it at source. So we're not cleaning beaches because we believe we want to turn off the tap first. That's the only way we're going to be able to stop this crisis, is by turning off the tap to stop it getting there. And so all of our campaigns are focused on championing the waste hierarchy. So we encourage businesses, we encourage governments, and we encourage consumers to rethink. So thinking about the way that they're packaging products, thinking about the way that they do business. Then it's about refusal. So what can you cut out? What can you remove? And what can you reduce? And then reuse. So reuse is a really key kind of aspect to all of our campaigns, and something that you'll see across all of our work. So what do we actually do? All of our campaigns are really people powered. So we focus on community serving campaigns. So Refill, we have over 400 locally based, volunteer led and local authority led campaigns. We really focus on inspiring behaviour change, so both individuals and also businesses. And what's really important to us is coming up with simple solutions. So this whole situation, as we've kind of delved into, is ridiculously complicated, but by honing in on different specific products, we can start to really understand why they're there and how we can avoid them. So keeping it as simple as possible. And then just by really empowering people to challenge the system and take action where they live. And we also work on engaging and influencing the brands. So kind of both aspects, working with the consumers to show the demand, and then also engaging with the brands and the businesses to get them to take action. So a little snapshot of our campaigns, and I'll very quickly give you a bit of an overview of some of our bigger campaigns. So Refill, we have touched on. Hopefully you have seen the window stickers. Maybe some of you have got the app. And as I said, we started off as a drinking water campaign. In October last year, we had some very exciting developments, and we've now expanded the campaign beyond drinking water. So this is us really focusing in on tackling things like packaging from supermarkets, food to go packaging, so coffee cups, lunch on the go, plastic-free shopping. And we're also going to start mapping borrow schemes, deposit return schemes, cup schemes, and essentially making the Refill app the go-to for avoiding all single-use plastic. So this is a major shift for us, and it's really, really exciting. And we've really seen since the pandemic, people are using the app much more now to access zero waste shops, which is amazing. I think we've got about 400 now mapped. And we're really starting to see a shift. So people are using it much more locally to find packaging-free shopping options in their local community. A lot of our work, particularly Refill, was really hit by the pandemic. Overnight, the high street shop closed down, and we saw big chains banning reusables, despite the evidence that we'd seen that proved that they were safe. So straight away, we reacted really quickly. We worked with lots of different organisations. We brought in scientists and epidemiologists, and we launched some guidance for businesses, which is all about safely accepting reusables. And we also launched contactless coffee. which is a super simple campaign that helped consumers to get out and about to enjoy their coffee, but without having any contact. So if you haven't seen the video, it's really easy. You just can take your coffee cup in, you can pop it down on the counter, the server can pour your coffee in, you can pick up your coffee, safely leave without any contact. So this was really picked up actually, and actually went global and has been adopted into Canada's bylaws now, which was quite an exciting and unexpected development for us with the campaign. And we also launched a petition over the summer calling on the big chains. So as usual, we have seen it's the independent retailers and the local businesses who straight away got on board. They saw the guidance, they were like, brilliant, that's what we've been waiting for, we just wanted that clarification. But we were just getting nowhere with the chains. So we launched a petition, and by, I think, September, we had got Pret, Costa and Starbucks to all reverse their ban on reusables and start accepting reusable cups and reusable bottles again, which was amazing. And, you know, a big thanks to all of our supporters who really made that happen. We've also been doing a lot more work with the food to go sector. So we launched a report, which is available on our website, benchmarking all of the food to go chains. So that's kind of Costa, Pret, McDonald's, all of the cafes, and looking at what they're doing in terms of single-use plastic. And we set out a roadmap for how they can improve in the future, which really focuses on reuse. So that's all on our website if you want more information. Coming up this year, we are launching World Refill Day. So again, this is part of our refill campaign, but it's a global public awareness campaign to help people live with less plastic. So it's going to be really bringing together the refill heroes, the zero waste shops, the cafes, the community groups that have been doing amazing work, and then providing guidance and really demonstrating the consumer demand for the big brands and the big businesses that still haven't taken action. So we would love for all of you to get involved on World Refill Day. We'll be launching officially next week, so do look out on our website for more info on that one. And finally, the other area that we campaign on is around flushed plastic. So looking at food to go, the packaging, and then also the plastic that ends up going down our toilets, which actually makes up around 6% of all the marine litter on our beaches comes from our toilet. So this are things like wet wipes, cotton bud sticks, contact lenses, and period products, which, and also nappies, which quite a lot of people are flushing. So all of this causes blockages, which then leads to our drain pipes overflowing, which causes sewage overflows, but also plastic ending up on our beaches. So we have two campaigns on menstrual products, plastic-free periods, which is all about empowering women to have a choice when it comes to what they put in their bodies. So making plastic-free products much more available on the high street, really pressuring the brands and encouraging that individual behaviour change. And also Rethink Periods, which is our period education programme that we are working with schools to educate young people, not just on the plastic in their period products, but about the whole life cycle, and to provide an unbiased education option for them. So Libby, who is on the call here today, she runs that for us, and it's been amazingly successful. Last year we reached over 100,000 people, students, and trained over 700 teachers during the pandemic by taking it online. So we are really starting to have impact and reach young people getting these messages out there. So that was a whistle-stop tour, basically, of everything we do, because I think we are almost out of time, but I just wanted to end on some individual actions. So things that you can do. So starting small is probably my number one tip, and do a plastic audit. Check out the amazing Everyday Plastic Survey if you haven't heard of that, or if you haven't done this before. but having a look at what you throw in the bin every week is a really great place to start, by then working out, okay, what could I swap in? A good one for us recently was Tetra Packs. We get a Milk and More oat milk delivery now that comes to our house every week, and that's cut out one of the biggest kind of problem items for us. We also get a veg box, and we're starting to really drill down to the little problem things that we weren't able to work out how to get rid of. So starting by understanding what you're putting in the bin is a great way to do it. And also just be kind to yourself. Don't try and do it all at once. It's taken me many years now to get to having an almost plastic-free bin, but it's not entirely possible. So just be kind to yourself. Choose to reuse wherever possible. Carry your reusable coffee cup. Try things like reusable wet wipes. Wet wipes are a massive problem. Shop locally. Find your local bakery, your local greengrocer, because chances are they will have plastic-free or packaging-free options. And also you'll be supporting local businesses and keeping that money in the local economy. Use your voice. We are very powerful when we use our voice. Let your local MP know what you want. Let brands know what you want. Let them know why you're not buying their products. Because that's how we start to see real change. Also to inspire a culture change where you live, where you work. If you're at university or if you're at school, if you work at a school, starting to bring some of these things that you're doing personally to work with you and inspiring that cultural change can make a really big difference. And finally, move your money. That is another one that a lot of people don't think of. But really, letting your bank know in the same way that that we have with fossil fuels, that actually we're connecting the plastic and climate crisis together. So they are my top tips, which I hope will be useful. And if you want to find out a little bit more about City to Sea, about our work, then do check out our website and sign up to Plastic Free Journal. So that's our newsletter, which there's sign-ups all over the website, but we send a monthly newsletter with actions, things that you can do, top tips. We also have a whole section on our website that is dedicated to helping you live with less plastic. So that's got everything from your garden to your kitchen to your everywhere, anywhere I can think of. We've got tips. Parenting is on there. Follow us on social media, and if you do see us sharing campaign content, please do share that and help get it out there far and wide. Also, donating is a really great way. Obviously, if you have the cash, it will be gratefully received, and every penny that we receive from donations goes directly to powering our campaigns. And finally, if you have time and you have skills, we are always up for people volunteering and coming to join us with what we are doing. So that is all from me. I'm sure I've taken far too much time, so I'm going to stop talking now, but I have linked to some resources on here if you'd like them, and I'm sure we can share the deck. So thank you very much for listening.
Fantastic. Thank you very much, Jo. Yeah, that's absolutely brilliant. We're also going to hear from Grant Mercer now, who some of you will know as the owner and proprietor, I love that word, of Smaller Footprints, Clifton Village's main, only, I suppose, zero waste shop. Obviously, we've got tons around Bristol, but Grant happens to also be on the CCA committee. Grant, did you have any slides you wanted to show, or are you just going to speak to us for a minute?
I'm just going to speak.
Great. I will put you on speaker view. And yeah, so you were going to tell us about some of the why don't you introduce it?
Yeah, so I've got 10 things to say. Mainly it's going to be things that you can buy, drilling down on those individual actions that Jo's mentioned. It's not just things you can buy. I've got a political one, but we'll go through and hopefully at least a few of them will be useful to everyone. I just wanted to mention quickly as well that the sachets thing that Jo mentioned was particularly interesting to me, because we've recently been drafting a letter to the Environment Secretary And one of our suggestions was to have the government stop the automatic giving out of sachets. And we surveyed 50 customers on 17 ideas that we had, and that one wasn't particularly popular. We didn't think it was going to make the final draft of the letter. So to know that that is such a big issue now, overtaking cigarette butts, we will include that. So thanks, Jo. So the first item I'm going to mention, I'm going to go through these quite quickly because we tried to wrap up close to an hour, is den tabs, which are an alternative to toothpaste tubes. In the UK, we get through about 250 million toothpaste tubes a year. And I've double checked this, although I already knew, with Bristol Waste recently, the private firm which is contracted by the council to deal with waste. And toothpaste tubes aren't recyclable. They're composite, meaning they've got multiple materials in them and it's not cost effective to have them recycled. So they would be one of those items which make their way to Turkey, Malaysia, Indonesia, and likely get incinerated or just form a big pile over there. And also, as Jo said, I think the EU are looking like they will ban the export of waste, and we're currently looking like we won't, or we've, as she mentioned, we've kind of gone back on that previous commitment currently. So yeah, these den tabs, they're dentist approved, they've got the right amount of fluoride, 1,450 parts per million. You just bite it, chew it around, it mixes with the saliva in your mouth, forms a paste, and you brush. And those can be refilled at zero waste shops. I think most of the shops have got them, if not all. They're not that expensive either. For 60, it's done by weight, but it works out about £2.20. So for one person, 60 twice a day, it's about £2.20 a month. So doable for most people, I think. Staying dental briefly, mouthwash tablets is another one. Work out at 5p, even if you buy the smallest amount available in a small glass jar, they work out at 5p a pop, which by calculations, that's cheaper than buying mouthwash in plastic bottles. I think the base of a plastic bottle, the bulk of it can be recycled, but the hard lid, the white hard lid, can't. So I think that's an area where some people could make plastic savings as well, although the efficacy of mouthwash versus water, I'm not so sure of, so that's personal preference. Quite a new one, number 3, is crisps. This has only come to us within the last month. There's a farm in Staffordshire, and you might have seen the brand Just Crisps. Using their own potatoes and their own rapeseed oil, they've started selling crisps in tubs, which we return actually via a different company that are coming to us anyway, so it's not adding to transportation, which is great. Potato sea salt crisps, which have gone down really well. And crisp packets were another one of those things appearing on Jo's slide that are a massive culprit on the beaches, and it's another thing that is not recyclable by Bristol Waste. There are TerraCycle places where you can get them to, but they're not getting there in the main. Fourth suggestion is you can get plastic-free veg boxes. Obviously, the grocers are doing their best to lose things, but you're picking loose things from a plastic tray. They're doing their best. Obviously, again, as Jo mentioned, plastic does have its uses in various things, food preservation being one. But if you were to get a veg box from a local farm, it's much less likely, and you can probably engage with them and you can get less plastic. I mean, I know that Riverford, which is Devon, there's closer ones, Leacourt Farm in Bristol, you can actually ask for a plastic-free box and then you'll get none whatsoever. Number 5 is the political one I mentioned. So another one of our 17 suggestions was to demand of your MP that the citizens' right to repair be developed. France has recently made gains in this area, where electrical items have to come with a repairability score. Whereas in the UK, most places around the world, electrical items are designed to be obsolescent. You might get 2 years, 5 years out of them, and then not be able to repair them because they want you to buy a new one. So demanding that obsolescence regulations be brought in, and there be more avenues to have your equipment fixed and sent back to the original manufacturer would be a great one. So that's halfway through. I'm on number 6 now, which is coffee beans. The packaging that coffee beans come in, it's not recyclable. At smaller footprints, we get our coffee beans from Wogan Coffee, which is down near Cabot Circus. They do the roasting there, and they provide to us in reusable packaging, which when they do the next delivery, it goes back to them. It's proper circular economy. So circular economy between us and our supplier, and then between us and you, which is the way it needs to be. Number 7 is toys. When I go around my friends' houses, I don't do that at the moment, but when I used to, and they've got children, the mountain of plastic in toys is crazy. And you can get a lot of wooden toys. Obviously, not all wood is sustainable, but have a look around, and I think it's a better option overall than the plastic. Somebody mentioned milk, and then Jo mentioned milk and more. I was going to say about a couple of providers we've got of oat milk and tiger milk, which is made of tiger nuts. The tiger nuts currently aren't British, so I'd suggest prioritising the oat milk if you like it. We've got a Bristol maker, guy called Josh. His is called Tiger and Float. Tiger for the tiger nuts, and Float is his oat brand. The oats are organic and made in Lincolnshire, traceable to a single farm. And then we've got Rerouted, which is from Totnes in Devon. They deliver to us in lots of places in Bristol via an electric vehicle. And you bring the empty bottles back, they get sanitized and reused. Number 9, this one's, I thought was so obvious I shouldn't mention it, and Jo's covered it, but reusable cup. And that's great what City are encouraging those major shops to reintroduce cups. I'm not seeing people use them anything like as much as they should. For the pandemic, during the pandemic, most people on this call will be if they're getting takeaway coffees, but I think it's important enough now that we need to politely be mentioning it to our friends, because I think I would say less than 1% of people are actually using reusables when they get takeaway coffee. Number 10, I've crammed a lot into one bracket of liquids. These are things that we can provide refills for, and it's rapeseed oil, sunflower oil, olive oil, sesame oil, all of which we have circular economy with our suppliers. And then cleaning products, multi-surface spray, washing up liquid, and then cosmetics like shampoo and conditioner. All of those things can be refilled at us or any of the other zero waste shops in Bristol. So hopefully amongst that 10, there's at least one that would be beneficial to all of you. And that's me.
Okay, great. Yeah, so thank you for that, Grant. We're almost at past already, but we've got some questions that have come in. Before we get to those, I'm going to flash back up my slide from before and just remind everyone that we've got palm oil talk in 2 weeks' time, shipping talk 2 weeks after that. We've got loads of cool stuff on both group websites if you want to check out either cliftonclimateaction.org or pcrenergygroup.org. We've got the videos and the monthly challenges. This month's challenge is actually on finance, Jo, which is interesting that you brought that up as one of the actions that you mentioned. So if you want to get some pointers on how to get more involved with where your money is invested and trying to make sure that it's not invested in fossil fuels, there's some tips on that. Of course, our email addresses are there, and perhaps the most important is if you have enjoyed tonight's talk, we'd love you to send us a donation on PayPal. £3 is fine, £2, £1, £5 we think would be great, if you can afford it, of course. If you can afford it and you really enjoyed tonight's talk, picking us 10 quid is like paying for you and also paying for someone else who can't afford it. So that's just a really cool thing that you could do if you want to support groups. Okay, back to the questions. So I'll go back up to the top. So I think the first ones are more likely to be for you. So the first one here is, I remember hearing about a scheme for supermarkets to start using lidded reusable plastic boxes for their fresh goods, which would be washed or sterilized on an industrial scale for reuse within the supermarkets. Is that something you've heard of, and what are your thoughts on it?
That sounds amazing. I don't know which supermarket that was specifically, but that sounds like an example of a deposit return scheme, or a return on the go. So we're starting to see a lot more of these reuse models popping up. So everything from coffee cup schemes that we have in the UK, the Shrewsbury Cup. There's been lots of talk about having one in Bristol, so you could go and get your coffee from somewhere, drop it off somewhere else, and it will then get washed in these industrial facilities. We are really pushing for more scale on these kind of schemes. I haven't heard of one in a supermarket. Most supermarkets will now let you take your own container in though. So you can go to the deli counter and get things without the plastic in supermarkets. And yeah, we would love to see more on the industrial scale where you can pick up and drop off. Actually, what this might be relating to is Loop. So Loop is now a global reuse scheme that's starting. They are launching in Tesco. So this could be to do with Loop, which is less at the deli counters, but you can pick up branded products. So you can get your Haagen-Dazs ice cream, your Dove deodorant in reusable containers that you can order online. And I believe you will be able to then drop off within Tesco stores. And I think that's launching later this year.
Okay, yeah, great. Another one for you, I think, Joe. Someone's asked a question, which I'm going to slightly reword as, where can people find, you listed a lot of amazing stats about, you know, the quantity of plastic waste in our oceans and things. Where can people find these sorts of facts and figures if they want to look at them for themselves?
So everything that I went through is all totally backed up. It comes from various research papers. As a good starting point would be on our website. So on the City to Sea website, we have a section which is all about the problem with plastic. So we cover ocean plastic, plastic and climate change, things like bioplastics and recycling. So everything that we link to and reference is all on the website. Some of the stuff I talked about today is some quite recent stats, so might not have made its way onto the site yet, but more than happy if you want to drop me an email about anything specific, and I'm happy to share references.
Great. We've got a recommendation for anyone who's interested about Silicon Straw Company, developed reusable British straws to help reduce single-use plastic. Yeah, fantastic. We've actually got a question for you, Joe, from Grant. How effective will the law, I think you actually may have spoken about this later in your thing, but how effective will the law be that is introduced, how effective will the law be introduced next year be, which will tax businesses who use plastics not comprised of at least 30% recycled materials?
No, it's a really good question. The answer is it is a step in the right direction. It's definitely by no means enough. So this is the plastic tax that will be coming in. Well, was in consultation. It doesn't actually come in until 2022. And so this is that a producer of plastic packaging will have to pay a tax if there is less than 30% recycled plastic in their product. So essentially, if they have 30% recycled plastic within their product, they don't pay the tax. So, I mean, it's not great. It's a bit of a cop-out. We were campaigning really hard for a tax on all throwaway plastics. We got 250,000 people to sign a petition, and 160,000 then went on to fill in the government consultation, and the government still completely copped out on it. So yes, it will definitely make a difference. It's a step in the right direction, but it's nowhere near enough.
Okay, yep, Grant's got his thumb up, that's good. Libby, your colleague, I think, has put a plug in for her Rethinking Periods project. If anyone wants it in their school, please email us at rethinkperiods@ctc.org.uk. We give free demo boxes of period products and PSHE Association approved teaching resources, all for free. So if anyone works in a school, definitely check that out. It's called SPD at my school. Maybe that was just because I went to a weird school. I think this person is, Stella is just talking about walking around Clifton Village and seeing the bins overflowing with single-use coffee cups. We do have rather a lot of coffee shops in Clifton Village. It's a tad excessive. I don't think anyone's going to notice that Boston Tea Party's moved. Maybe that's just me. I might get in trouble for that. It's definitely a problem, and the No Excuse for Single-Use campaign. I think that's one of yours, isn't it, Jo?
So that was a Boston Tea. Well, it's a hashtag. Boston Tea Party have been using it. We've used that before, but it's a great campaign, just encouraging people to ditch the single-use plastic. So yeah, we're still on that one. Get everyone out there using their reusable coffee cups. It's a great shout from Grant as well.
Great. Somebody's recommending your crisps, Grant. That's nice to know that some people are enjoying them. What else have we got? Yep, we've talked about coffee cups. If you don't already have a reusable coffee cup, maybe consider buying a stainless steel one. The bamboo coffee cups are made from formaldehyde-based glues. I read a paper on them that stated they were only tested for leachates, up to 70 degrees Celsius liquids. Of that, all sorts of nasties come out in the cup. So stainless steel. They're getting a from my girlfriend. So that must be true.
Just to add to that one, sorry, Grant. With all reusables, if you've already got a reusable bottle or a cup, don't buy another one.
Yes.
That's the other problem that we have. If you have a cupboard full of tote bags and reusable bottles and reusable coffee cups, then that's actually worse than having single use and disposing of it properly. So we definitely need to think about the life cycle of these items as well.
Very good point. Very important point. Apparently the supermarket scheme we talked about a minute ago, Jo, Julie says it was going to be a pan-supermarket national scheme. So I guess we'll all have to keep our ears open for that one. Mm-hmm. This is an interesting one. Are plastics in tea bags harmful? I presume the question is about whether they're harmful to humans who drink tea, not the planet, because plastic pollution is definitely harmful to the planet.
So I guess both. I think as I touched on very briefly talking about plastics and human health, we don't know, but chances are it's not good for us. So the more that we are ingesting these microplastics, the worse it could get. We've just switched actually to get a different kettle, because I heard every time you boil your kettle, if you have a plastic one, the microplastics are coming off the kettle as well. But the real harm from the plastic in tea bags, if you compost them, is to your soils and to the worms and to all the microorganisms that live within the soils. It's a massive problem that they're only really just starting to uncover. So definitely look out for plastic-free tea bags. I think it's only PG Tips, Clipper, and Pucker so far on the market. I could be wrong, some more could have launched, but that was all that was available.
Okay, interesting. So don't compost tea bags with plastic in them. I mean, I guess when you say it like that, it sounds really obvious, but I'll have to go and check the ones we've got at home.
Think of the worms.
Yeah, think of the worms. Why is no one thinking about the worms? You mentioned bioplastics. Does potato starch count as a bioplastic?
Oh, good question. It depends on the product, I think, and how it's been manufactured. I think because there are actually some good ones. I think some starch are okay. Some of the thistle. There's a good thistle starch now that does actually biodegrade, but it would depend on the product, and it's very hard to find out because they all say that they're home compostable. But if you want to send me an email with the brand, or if it's a particular product, I can run it past our sustainability consultant, who is our in-house expert on bioplastics. That is her mission, to take them down.
Really interesting ones here. So actually, I'm going to skip to this one immediately because it's really interesting to me. People on low income, is it possible for them to be plastic sustainable, or is this not realistic for them?
It's a really, really, really good question. And it's something we try super hard to do at City to Sea, to make going plastic, not plastic free, but towards plastic freedom affordable. Because yeah, I totally agree. A lot there is quite a lifestyle associated to it. A lot of zero waste shops are expensive, but at the same time, I have found some products are so much cheaper when I go to the zero waste shop. So things like herbs and spices, oats. Well, Grant will know, you know, some items definitely come up more expensive, but a lot of things I'm always really surprised at how much cheaper it comes up. Our veg box is an organic veg box is much cheaper than it would be to get the vegetables. Our milk's actually cheaper than we used to buy Tetra Paks. So it is definitely affordable, and buying reusable items, although you have the upfront cost, buying reusable menstrual products, you can actually save 94% of the amount that you would have spent on disposables. You just have to have that initial outlay, but definitely reusable wet wipes, nappies, you will make a saving in the long run.
Yeah. And I guess go ahead, Grant.
I was just going to mention that we sell moon cups, which are supposedly usable for a couple of years. I think I'm right about that, and they're £18, which you'd consume really quickly in disposable sanitary products.
Libby will know more, but I think it's up to 10 years for a moon cup.
Okay.
It's the life cycle of one of them. But yeah, for all reusable period products, you really do save a huge amount of money over the life cycle. So that's
on the cost effectiveness as well, Jo's right. There are items where you can get which are significantly cheaper. We have things which are organic and they're cheaper than the supermarket's non-organic option. But on the whole, it kind of depends what you would buy if you went into a supermarket, because the supermarket is able to pitch, say, 10 different brands of white rice, and you'll have a big range of prices on those, whereas we, given our space, would only be able to pitch two, one organic and one non. So if you are prioritizing price when you go into a supermarket, you can definitely get it a lot cheaper than the zero waste shop. But if you're prioritizing quality and organic, if you go into the supermarket, we would definitely be cheaper. So it just depends what angle you're coming at it from, really.
I guess that it also comes down to maybe doing your plastic audit and looking at which items you can afford. You know, don't do everything, but maybe if it's milk that you're getting through tons of, or something, you know, something else that you're getting through a lot of every week, then just start by swapping them out and gradually replace. So it, you know, you don't have to break the bank.
Yeah, and if I may, I just wanted to make a couple of little points on this one as well. The first is kind of a silly one, which is that I have never been judged going into a zero waste shop with any container. You can get them to fill up whatever you want with whatever you want. It doesn't have to be the same brand of shampoo getting filled up with shampoo. It can be milk. It doesn't matter. They won't care. They're just happy that you're reusing your materials. And the second more serious point is, of course, it's always really important to bear in mind that people on lower incomes do not have the same capacity to make the same changes that other people do. But at the same time, we are Clifton Climate Action, Bishopston, Cotham and Redland Energy Group. And I think many of us, if you are from those areas, and of course this is online, some of you might live in any part of the country, in the world, I don't know. If you do live in those areas, I'm speaking as one of these people. We are all pretty damn privileged, and we can make more changes than we sometimes like to tell ourselves we can. Like, certainly when I started becoming more environmentally conscious, I thought I was going to have to use so many things. And actually, it turned out, yeah, it's not as hard as it sounds. The more of us who can afford to, support these projects do, makes it more common, more easily acceptable, and hopefully in the long run cheaper for everybody else. So I think those of us who can afford it can have almost a responsibility to be slightly early adopters. Of course, if that's not you, I'm not talking about you, and I'm not obliging anyone to do anything they can't afford to do. But if you can afford it, go and check it out, because some things may be more expensive, some things will be cheaper, and I think it's just generally a really good thing to do. That's just me on my soapbox there for a second. I've lost the chat room. Come back. I can't see any of the questions. I think we're nearly at the end, though. Okay, I'm going to stop sharing. There it is. Right, it comes back when I stop sharing my screen. Okay.
There are a couple of questions on bioplastics.
Yeah, go for it.
And poo bags. Great question. I do not know the answer to that one. I don't have a dog, but I will ask around the office and see what people say, because I'm sure there will be a favourite recommendation for that one.
Yeah, we had another one. Things like V-gummies. I don't want to go through every product and ask you, do you know if these are plastic free? But I don't. Since someone brought this one up, do you happen to know if V-gummies are?
I don't know what V-gummies are, I'm afraid.
That's okay. That's okay. I'm sure that information will be available online somewhere.
Do email me, yeah, and I'm sure I can find out for you.
What email address should people contact you on if they have?
It's jo@citytosea.org.uk. Just JO.
Yeah, perfect. Okay, I think we'll wrap that up there then. Thank you so much to Jo and Grant for speaking tonight. Thank you to all of you for coming. I'm being sent a message, but I can't really read that from here. What are you saying? Gummies, yes, apparently they are plastic free. There we go. We got the message in the end. We got there. Yes, thank you everyone for coming. Thank you for the interruption. Yes, please check out all of the links I showed before, our websites. We've got more talks coming up, palm oil, shipping, more in the future, whatever those will be. And yeah, please donate via the PayPal link if you would like to support the group. Okay, thanks everybody.